discussion of the film.
It's 5:30.
Once again, we'll be starting this panel. It's like time check. Just 1 minute after. How many should we have? No, balance. Okay. What's the me? So this panel is identity and politics, nexus between relations and violence in Africa part 2. Yesterday we had the inaugural section and it was very, very much about today. Today is the second part of it, and we have some very interesting organizations at least this panel very productive. So that's not taking much of our time. I'd like to introduce the first speaker, dynamics of youth identity and political violence in Nigeria by Sunday. But let me also
Sorry, is it presenting? We have your slide. You can bring it down.
You have a slide. I can share it some. So start being. So this is about the okay, let us announce that we have presenters who have 15 minutes each for presentation, and I think we'll have about roughly 15 minutes for question and answer segments. So presenters, please stick with this time limits to start this. Since it's a Sunday, so we can
Is right.
Presenter exploring conflict trigger in community development in Nigeria by diplomacy. Public standards. Thank you. So it comes from someone.
Sorry, I agree for.
So should be the answer.
So it should be the first.
Yeah, so okay.
Okay.
Do you have a slide?
Yes, I have it. Stepping down. Oh, is it this?
No.
Miscommunication. Is it this?
No, it's not.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. My name is John Marshall Montague. I'm here to present my paper titled Exploring Conflicts, Triggers and Community Development Projects in Oyo State, Nigeria. So by introduction, I want to start with what motivated this project. Having worked with communities and having seen that development projects in most communities are often not completed and at some point abandoned. So I began to look at what are the causes of the abandonment of these protests in some of the rural communities in Nigeria, especially in the southwest and the south. And this was part of my PhD thesis. So community development, which also are being funded by donor agencies such as the World Bank, the European Union, often it is expected that there should be some level of participation of the direct beneficiaries of this project. And this sometimes has also been seen and shown by some scholars that conflicts often undermine some of these projects implemented in rural communities. And this also has involved in the poor utilization and often sustainable use of these projects. So community development projects actually involves projects like roads, electricity, construction of health centers and all of that. But the concept of community development and conflict is actually a process that does not have a definite approach or outcome because conflicts actually occurs in different frequencies and they also involve the interaction of humans according to Wahab and Ajit, who also studied about some of the causes of community development projects. So going on in the introduction, the process of community development projects is actually the involvement of the direct beneficiaries of these projects. So sometimes the interventions comes with a greater number of the participants or participation of the beneficiaries of the implemented project, and which often results in little or no success, according to Abiona 2005. So the aim of project implementation in rural communities is actually to improve the quality of life of the citizens. Yes, it is seen that the outcome of some of these projects do not actually tally or often brings about challenges during some of the phases of the whole project. So this project looks at so this is my community I chose for this project or this research for a rural community in Ibadan, local government. So it is bordered with these other communities, the Avatar, okay, Odom, Aribi, followers for not pronouncing the communities, the Yoruba community. Well, it is in the local government of Ibadan. So there are other infrastructures like school and health center that this community share with the neighboring community. What is the statement of the problem? In Nigeria, the World Bank assisted project, like I said earlier, covers these infrastructures. But in the course of interrogating research, I found out that most of these researches around development projects have been subjected to areas and focusing on the cost, the value addition. There are scant attention that has been paid to conflicts triggered by the direct beneficiaries of this project, which is narrowed to the World Bank assisted projects. So the aim is to identify the potential sources of conflicts that have hindered sustainable community projects implemented by the WAPs, that's the World Bank. And the objective is to examine the nature of conflicts and the effects of this conflict to the projects. Now, there are some literature reviews that I tried to look at, which speaks to development projects and conflicts. There is this linkages between development and conflict, and some scholars have actually interrogated, why is development oftentimes leading to conflict? Why some have also seen that conflict, in some cases, in some works that I've read, especially in the Niger Delta, where you see that conflict has actually brought about, projects, especially for the NDTC projects. There are some that came as a result of the communities agitating for their rights. So there is also positive and negative connotation to that. So in the management of some of these conflicts, which actually is as a result of projects implemented in communities, oftentimes have a negative or positive, but most often it is on the negative side. So looking at some of the views of some scholars who have said that poor implementation of policies and also lack of adequate participation of relevant stakeholders in the implementation of this process has actually contributed to the non-realization of sustainable development or the use of this project. So this claim also brings about the fact that development policies without the people's engagement affects the outcome adversely. And yes, this is a claim, but we'll see what has implemented in this research. According to Walter Rodney in his book, How Europe Underdeveloped Africa, it said that the development in human society is many-sided. It's a many-sided process, which is multifaceted. And it also involves the individuals and the relationship with external and also external persons. So I used the realistic conflict theory, which postulates that intergroup conflict is often a product of competition of limited resources and also about opposing interests of some group members or individuals within the community. Going further, the realistic conflict theory also suggests that the reducing of dispute among these groups or individuals within a group and the discrimination in development projects when groups find themselves vying for scarce resources or looking for who handles work often could result in the disruption of the intervention. The research methods, like I said, this is a case study research. Purposive sampling was used to select the water projects implemented in a rural community. Okay, so I just run through to the findings. Yeah, so this research actually came out with some conflict issues, which were intra-group conflicts, economic conflict, communication conflict, and post-implementation conflict. But the major issue, in this project was actually the conflicts, the intra-group conflicts. I did mention, my chair is already giving me side. Well, in the selection of respondents, I interviewed the Community Development Association executives in the community and also the CPMC, that's the Community Project Management Committee members. They were the two groups within the community that had serious intra-group conflicts in this project implementation. Reason being that when this project came to the community, the CPMC were given that authority to manage and supervise the project. But there is existing structure in the community, by the community development associations. And in the course of implementation, even before, during, and after the project, there were a series of conflicts. And this was the major conflict that affected the project, till date. Well, let me also say that this project was implemented in 2018 by the World Bank through the Community and Social Development Project. So other conflicts also came up, like economic conflict, about who handles the resources, who handles the money, who are the people to be in charge of the money generated from the water project, because they were also selling these water projects to tankers, that goes to community, to other communities to service them with water. So there were also the issue of communication between the CPMC and the entire community member, because at the point when they had the clash, they find it difficult to even report to the Development Association team. And there were also post-implementation conflicts. So these are conflicts that also occurred even after the project has been implemented, and it was in use at a point. Yeah. So I just want to take 2 extracts from the respondents. One of them said that our people didn't get it right. Backing out when conflict arose between the LDA leaders and the CPMC was part of our failure in maintaining the project, and we lacked the cooperative effort. Another person said, I would say that we, the members of the project committee, suffered. For instance, if other committee members see us with new clothes or driving our car, they call us thieves, but I contributed my own money and time. If I want to go out now and carry my car, people still abuse me, saying thieves. Even the chairman of the CPMC experienced this too. Within me, I feel bad and pain. And at some point, I left and traveled to stay with my children just to be away from the community. But later came back. Still, I don't have peace of mind. I feel very angry. It was a traumatic and psychological issue for me. So this is what one of the respondents. So looking at this photograph, when I visited this community, that was in 2023, the one that I'm standing with the overhead tank still there. By the time I visited in May 2024, the overhead tank has been dismantled, all the pipes and everything is kept, generator, everything the generator actually got back. So this is to show that the conflicts that existed between these groups within the community actually affected the sustainable use of this community. So the effects of these conflicts came as a result of poor project execution, loss of interest and disengagement, unwillingness to even pay the development due that they were supposed to be contributing to ensure that they maintain this project. So there were low maintenance, which finally led to project abandonment, which is at today not in use. Well, by way of conclusion and policy recommendation, this paper concluded that conflicts resulting from core struggles, perceived inequalities, poor communication, and distrust were inherent with negative effects on the project. Then recommendation, it's important for implementing agencies or partners to ensure that there is harmony in the decision-making processes between existing community leaders and project management community leaders, and also to ensure that there is an inbuilt conflict resolution mechanism from the conception of this project, in order to de-escalate emerging conflicts that may hinder project sustainability. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your very brilliant presentation and also for sticking with time. Next, you have Ezekiel Afan. Great. So you can come over. Thank you so much. So anyway, sharing his perspective on the dynamics of youth identity and political violence in Nigeria.
So it seems they have an issue.
So,
They have an issue.
is this something?
So you should go on while
Can you copy from here? So that's
send you flash today. Don't worry, I'll find it.
Should we pass up?
I'll leave engage you.
Okay. So,
The last presenter, I'll leave.
yeah. So we'll move on to the next presenter. So the next presenter will be looking at African democracy and identity politics, electoral observation at AU strategies by Igwe Kelechi and Sochima Mesu. So you have the floor now. Remember, you have 15 minutes for your presentation.
Okay, good day everyone. My name is Messi Sachima Princess, and I'm talking about African democracy and identity politics, challenges of electoral observation, and AU for 70 the goal. So we have the outline, the introduction, aim and objective, overview of election in Africa since the 21st century. We have challenges international election observer encounter during the mission in Africa. The nexus between electoral violence and identity politics in Africa, African Union agenda, AU agenda, 2060 goals, silencing the gun, and conclusion. Election observers are an organized group of international, intergovernmental, and international non-governmental organizations. The election observation process is defined as a systematic, comprehensive, and accurate gathering of information concerning the law, processes, and institutions related to the conduct of an election, and other factors concerning the overall environment of the election. It's also the impartial and professional analysis of such information, and also the evaluation of pre-election, election day, post-election period through comprehensive long-term observation, employing a variety of techniques. Election observers are responsible for gathering data, analyzing it, and providing an assessment of an electoral process. Based on that assessment, they provide recommendations for improving the integrity and effectiveness of future elections, in order to bring them into better alignment with the country's international commitments. Democratic governance in its core implies the fundamental of free, fair, and credible election, a universally upheld principle as a cornerstone of legitimate political authority. In this respect, the deployment of international election observers is turning into one of the key drivers for improving the integrity of election in Africa. The primary objective of international election observer is to carefully observe, monitor, evaluate, and provide comprehensive reports. These observers play a crucial role in ensuring transparency, accountability, and fairness in various contexts, such as the election, conflict, or human rights situation. However, electoral disputes and transnational crises often relegate observers' recommendations for stable democratic process, and issues escalate into violence, damaging public confidence in election outcome. Elections in several African states, such as Cote d'Ivoire, Kenya, Nigeria, and Zimbabwe, have historically provoked ethnic tension and bloodshed rather than acting as a force for peace and political stability, economic success. Electoral violence is a major source of democratic instability, with a palpable threat of disconsolidation and regional instability. Thus, there is a lack of sufficient research on the electoral recommendation from observers in African elections and electoral violence spikes in the 21st century. When international election observers achieve their role, they serve three salient national purposes. Firstly, it's to attest that the process of political transformation was free, fair, and credible. Secondly, to bestow legitimacy on the newly elected government. Thirdly, to bestow a badge of international respectability on the country, testifying to its ability to conduct domestic elections. The aims and objective of this research, it seeks to unravel the nexus between electoral violence, often caused by identity politics, with electoral recommendation from observers for credible election, with the AU Charter on Democracy, Election and Governance. Also, this research seeks to develop strategies African Union in addressing the African 21st electoral violence within the AU mandate of silencing the guns in pursuit of the Agenda 2063. The main aim of this research is to recommend strategies to enhance multilateral framework to adopt the recommendations of African election observers for promoting democracy. Overview of election in Africa since 21st century. Electoral violence in Africa has resulted in significant number of deaths. Specific figures vary by country and time period. We have in Kenya 2007-2008 approximately 1,500 deaths and 700,000 people displaced. We have in Cote d'Ivoire 2010-2011 roughly 3,000 deaths and 500,000 displaced. We have in Nigeria the 2011 election at least 800,000 deaths in election violence, and we have in Ghana 2020 about 8 deaths reported during the general election. Now I'm going to talk about the challenges international election observers encounter during their mission in Africa. First, we have the influence of technology. Across the world, election management body has adopted innovative reforms such as stakeholder collaboration, legal structuring, and also ICT integration. However, in Africa, many countries have started embracing technology and also digital tools such as biometric registration, the GIS mapping, and also result transmission system and also electronic voting. However, challenges to persist as the international electoral observers struggle to assess them-driven election due to limited machine configuration, which continues to remain under sovereign control. In Nigeria 2023 election, we could see how this illustrated this gap, where there was a repeated tech failure, which resulted as a weakness, exposing it as INEC weakness. We also have political culture, whereby political culture continues to influence election in many African elections, and also language barrier. Political culture in terms that identity politics and also the influence of political godfather, how it affects the electoral process, whereby it affects the credibility of assessment based on purely transparency or fairness. And now we can see how countries such as Kenya and Nigeria exemplify how factors such as ethnicity, religion, regional dynamic affect or shape voter behavior. We also have logistic hurdles. Logistic hurdles plays a major the logistic hurdle is also a major challenge in international electoral observers encounter, and these challenges include poor infrastructure or vast geography, also administrative delay, where it affects the whereby affect the material being delivered to the post on time, and also how it also affects the smooth running of election process in many African countries. And also we have security concern. Security concern, which is also security threats, it has significant impact on international electoral observers in carrying out their mission, whereby during election period, it usually heightens potential for violence, which endangers the life of the observers and citizens. In the case of South Sudan, we could see how persistent instability and also threats from military armed groups had to force the international electoral observers out of some part of the country during the 2010 election, which affected international electoral observers from fully carrying out a comprehensive electoral assessment of the election. And also in case of Somalia, where we have military armed groups such as Al-Shabaab, how it poses at a constant threat to, especially in regional areas, and it also affects the international electoral observer from giving out their full impartial assessments. Elections in Africa are categorized by violence at various stages of the process. In world countries and even in the stable African countries, incumbents are often manipulating or believed to be tampering with the electoral process. The opposition party also have incentive to further their strength through the use of violence. Such violence is potentially damaging democratic process and undermining process towards democratization. Election can undermine faith in the democratic process and eventually legitimacy of the government itself, in addition to promoting authoritarianism and anti-democratic ideology. The nexus between electoral violence and identity politics in Africa. The nexus here refers to the connection between the two key issues, that's the electoral violence, which is the acts of violence that occur during the election process, and also identity politics in Africa, which refers to the political position based on the identity and belief or perspective of individuals, which often categorize or social groups categorize themselves as language, ethnicity, religion, or even regional dynamic. In the 21st century, most African voters in African states election vote based on identity politics, regardless of the campaign program of the contestants. There's evidence that competitive elections tend to entrench ethnic division in emerging nations, such as Africa. The 2011 Nigeria election served as the prime example of how ethnic diversity has contributed to electoral violence. Elections in Africa states such as Cote d'Ivoire, Kenya, Nigeria, and Ghana have historically provoked ethnic tension and bloodshed rather than acting as a force for peace, political stability, and economic success. Election-related violence take the form of post-election aggression. The coalition and announcement of the result of the election marks the start of the post-election period. Election issues are often litigated and resolved during this time, and aggression during election can take many different forms, including violent protests and assault on supporters, party leaders, and rival candidates. African Union Agenda. The Agenda 2063 Aspiration 3 envision an Africa defined by good governance, democracy, and unwavering respect for human rights, justice, and the rule of law. This necessitates cultivating robust, accountable institutions, championing a democratic ideal, and guaranteeing the protection of fundamental human rights of every citizen. Africa has made significant progress in institutionalizing electoral democracy, over the course of the past decade. And these are reflected in a number of successful multi-party elections in most of the African member states. African Union contributes to electoral observation through the African Union Election Observation Mission. The objective of the AU, the African Union Election Observation Mission, to provide an assessment and impartial reporting of the assessment of the election, including the degree to which conduct of the election meets regional, continental, international standards for democratic election, to offer recommendations for improvement of future elections based on the findings, and lastly, to demonstrate the AU interest to support African Union member states election and also the democratization process, now to ensure the conduct of genuine election and contribute to the consolidation of democratic governance, peace, and stability. The African Union African Charter on Democracy, Governance, and Election obligates nations in the continent to hold periodic elections, and such election must be monitored observed. Other international organizations have this form of vision in their status for promotion of democracy, and the president to act as a deterrent to potential electoral fraud and misconduct, as the knowledge that independent observers are closely watching can discourage such behavior. And secondly, this mission helps to ensure the legitimacy of the electoral process. The AU Agenda 2063 goals silencing the gun. African leaders have pledged not to bequeath the burden of conflict upon the next generation of Africans and took it to end all wars on the continent by committing to achieve all goals of a conflict-free Africa, make peace a reality for all people, and rid the continent of civil war and conflict, human rights violation, and humanitarian disaster and threat genocide. As a key component of Agenda 2063, silencing the gun underlines the necessity of making the continent mechanism for conflict prevention, management, and resolution operational at all levels, including leveraging on the African Union election observation in mitigating electoral violence in the region through their first-hand recommendation. My conclusion, in the African continent, characterized by a mosaic of electoral landscape, the role of international electoral observers has been both lauded for contributing to electoral reform and criticized for either legitimizing flawed elections or failing to affect substantive change. The African Union, in a bid to achieve its outlined silencing the guns goal, must prioritize its mission on the electoral observation and domesticating the expert first-hand recommendation of the AU observers, as elections have proven to be a major cause of the violence and geopolitical instability. And before I end it, the main aim in my aim and objective, the main aim of this research that I mentioned that I'll provide strategies recommended is one to establish a form of building, minding, follow-up mechanism, and also to enhance reforms based on the aid and partnership, to encourage reform based on aid and partnership, and also to empower domestic electoral reform, to empower domestic electoral reform coalition, and lastly to institutionalize observed recommendation now for them to incorporate it into national reform, legal reforms. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sochi. And we're moving straight ahead, and now we have some dynamics of international political violence in Nigeria. We now do 2 minutes for presentation.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Akpan Sunday Ezekiel, and I'm presenting on the topic, the dynamics of youth identity and political violence in Nigeria, though this is a work in progress. Background of the study. The outbreak of conflict in social settings is an intrinsic part of human society. As experienced throughout history, conflict has been a persistent social phenomenon. Though a global phenomenon, conflict in Africa has assumed a painful recurring dimension. In Africa, prominent example of conflict-prone countries include Sudan, South Sudan, the Democratic Republic of Congo, Ethiopia, Niger Republic, Libya, Central African Republic, Somalia, Burkina Faso, and Mali. In the contemporary era, over 25% of Africans live in conflict-endemic and afflicted countries. Nigeria, a great country in West Africa, serves as a particular interesting case study of conflict prevention in Africa. Nigeria's history is marked by persistent violence from primordial conflicts through European imperialism, independence, civil war, and military dictatorships to 21st century multi-party politics. Despite immense natural wealth, violence, underdevelopment, and exploitation have shaped the nation's trajectory and people's experiences. The persistence and complexity of violence in the geopolitical state in Nigeria has attracted national and international attention, making it the country with the third highest incidence of violent conflict in Africa. Only Somalia and the Democratic Republic of Congo performed worse, according to World WHO. Political violence in Nigeria takes many forms. Competition between political parties involves frequent violent clashes between de facto party militias, anti-state groups employed an assortment of tactics, including riots, terrorism, guerrilla warfare, kidnapping, and so against a diversity of targets that include government forces, civilian population aligned with the state, and civilian population more generally. Government forces also encourage a multiplicity of forces of violence repression targeted at a variety of population, utilizing both state resources, that is, police and military and paramilitary forces. The research objectives aims to identify and evaluate the factors and indicators that influence the dynamics of youth identity and political violence in Nigeria. The second objective seeks to examine the impact of non-violent outcomes of socioeconomic vulnerabilities on political exclusion of youth in Nigeria. The third seeks to evaluate the specific trends by recognizing variances in gender expressions and relations across youth contexts in Nigeria. The fourth seeks to examine the effect of media violence exposure and political violence among youth in Nigeria. The research question: what factors and indicators influence the dynamics of youth identity and political violence in Nigeria? What is the impact of non-violent outcomes of socioeconomic vulnerabilities on political expression of youth in Nigeria? Does political violence have a particular dramatic impact on the perception and construction of gender relations among youth in Nigeria? What effect does media violence exposure have on political violence among youth in Nigeria? The significance of the study. With a view to contributing to the nexus between intergroup relations and violence in Africa, focusing on the theme, continuity and discontinuity in African studies. The debate holds significance not only to an academic level, but also in terms of governmental policy making. Given the clear prominence of violence conflict in Nigeria, it is sacrosanct to examine the dynamics of youth identity and political violence in this nation, Nigeria, in order to reduce violent conflict on national domain. Clear identification of the factors and indicators that influence the dynamics of youth identity and political violence, particularly in Nigeria, would offer policymakers to undertake meaningful reforms designed to mitigate political risks of endemic violence in the conflicting geopolitical regions in Nigeria. Without an elaborate explanation of what provokes or triggers socioeconomic dissidence of youth identity and political violence, any exiguous improvement in political stability in Nigeria would certainly prove short-lived. A comprehensive outline of the socioeconomic drivers of political unrest in Nigeria would help policymakers formulate policies designed to combat the underlying causes rather than outward manifestation of civil strife in Nigeria. Scope and delimitation of the study. This study research design focused solely on quantitative methodology, which helps to provide valuable insight into the dynamics of youth, identity, and political violence in Nigeria. However, this approach may not capture the full spectrum of research on youth identity, state oppression, and youth resistance, political violence in Nigeria. Then the further study should consider incorporating qualitative research, which could offer more nuanced analysis, false identity expression, and alternative conflict narrative that were not represented in the dominant scientific political study in the African context to understand the patterns of continuity and discontinuities in violence in African study. This study research is based on online survey from youth purposefully selected to be included based on the 15 to 35 age bracket in the 6 geopolitical zones in Nigeria. However, due to lack of reliable national population census data for the youth category for 2025, this study cannot claim that the views of the respondents are representative of the 6 geopolitical zones in Nigeria as a whole. Despite the drawbacks of relying on self-reported measures, understanding youth attitude, perception, and beliefs around these issues is crucial to understanding the nexus between intergroup relations and violence in Africa. More comprehensive Scientific research study in other parts of the geographical region will be necessary to overcome the geographical restrictions of this study and assess how generalizable its result ought to be. Definition of term. The Commonwealth extends the youth age range to 15 to 29 years, while the United Nations set it between 15 and 24 years. The World Health Organization classifies people between the ages of 10 to 29 years as youth, and Nigerian youth policy defines youth as those between the ages of 15 and 35. Those phases of youth can be distinguished as early youth, people between the 15 years to 24 years, who are still reliant on their parents, and later youth, 25 to 30 years old, who are becoming more integrated into the society. The World Health Organization definition emphasizes both physical and psychological dimensions, that international use of physical force or power, threatening or actual against oneself, another person, or against a group or community, either result in or has a high likelihood of resulting in injury, death, psychological harm, maladdiction, or deprivation. That is for violence. Now, for identity, Hammer 2028 conceives of identity as a dynamic construct that must be considered at multiple levels of analysis. Hence, identity is mostly categorized in such form as cultural identity, national identity, class identity, political identity, and so on. Review of literature. Bede, Adams, and Asakatu, as well as 2024, explore the dynamics of youth violence in Plateau State, analyzing the root causes, contributing factors, and possible intervention. Using a mixed method research design, the study combines quantitative data from surveys with qualitative insights from interviews and focus group discussion. The study requires the socioeconomic, political, and ethnic drivers of violence, focusing on the roles of unemployment, political manipulation, and identity-based conflict. The findings reveals that youth violence in Plateau State is primarily driven by economic hardship, political escalation, and deep-rooted ethnic tension. Additionally, lack of effective governance and limited access to educational and economic opportunities further exacerbates the issue. The result emphasizes on how important it is for political manipulation, identity-based conflict, and economic hardship to fight violence. Tahir 2020 examined the causes of terrorism in 94 countries between 2005. 5 minutes. Okay.
Continue from those find it. Okay, go to your method first. Go to your method.
Okay. This study adopted the survey research design because it allowed the researcher to assess and explain the interaction between the independent and dependent variable. By using survey research design, the researcher could predict the phenomenon under consideration and find the possible link between the variables. The population were mostly youth comprising of educated and non-educated youth in Nigeria. The total population of the study was fully selected across the Nigerian political zone, that is North Central, Northeast, Northwest, North South, Southeast, South South, Southwest. And these zones make up the 6 states in Nigeria. Selection of the population is to eliminate dominance of a particular population category in the study. The study adopted the primary source of data collection questionnaire in gathering data on purposefully selected youth in Nigeria. The primary source of data collection used construct originality, opinion, separation of respondent study. Data was collected by administering an online structured questionnaire to 300 youth of the respective selected distributed zone. However, for this study, 30 response was gotten ever. So that's why I said it is a work in progress. Sampling size and sampling technique. The sampling units for the study were mostly youth from 15 to 35 age. On sampling size and technique, the purposive type of non-probability sampling techniques, where the odds of a member being selected for the sample cannot be calculated, was adopted. Though the focus is on youth, the purposive non-sampling sampling will ensure that respondents targeted were selected on convenience and ease to access the information. The data was analyzed with the use of descriptive analysis. During the course of this research, the following ethical procedures were considered. The study guide for information gathering was based on respect of persons, benevolence, and reality. Nigerian youth were treated as autonomous agents. It was ensured that the subject has received a full disclosure of the nature of the studies, the risks, benefits, and alternatives, with an extended opportunity to ask questions. The research study was conducted in the absence of any commercial or financial relationship that was construed as a potential conflict of interest. Now, the result of the sex of the respondent revealed that the male gender, 18% constitutes majority of the study population, while female 36%, 0.7% were the minorities percentage. This is just shows deviation in the male-female ratio of a given population. This can be said to indicate that youth identity and political violence are mostly male-dominated with fewer female population. The result of the age of the respondents generally show that all the respondents were youth. However, 13, which represent 43.3% of the respondents, belong to the age bracket of 30 to 55 years old, which from the majority of the respondents belong, which of the majority 20, that is 40% of the respondents belong to the age group 25 to 29 years, which represent the second highest category of the respondents. Then highest category 5, which represent 6.7% of the respondents, belong to the age category of 20 to 24. Overall, the implication of this result showed that variation in the age category of youth in the state is in Nigeria. While some youth could be classified as dependent youth, advanced youth, others could be classified as independent youth. Now, the section of political violence. Okay. Since this is a working paper in progress, there is no conclusion yet, but the finding needs to be worked more. We need to work on the findings.
So we'll go straight to the next presenter. We'll have go back to your state identity, belonging, and state formation in Nigeria. David.
Yeah, good evening, everyone. My name is David Sonjo, and I'm a class student at Florida International University in Miami, Florida. And the title of my paper is Go Back to Your State, Identity, Belonging, and State Formation in Nigeria's Fourth Republic. I mean, before I get there, time to like this topic, I mean, in 2016, in one time, the young person of Uki Senator Tubela is sponsored a bill that passed before the reading that's, I mean, like state of origin should be like, the state, I mean, should be removed from the Nigerian constitution and should be placed with state of reference, but the bill did not pass before the reading. So I'm just like concerned about like efforts of states, I mean, on state origin. And this research is very much by personal like experience. I mean, where like we work in certain place because I know in one way or the other, most of us have experienced like discrimination based on our ethnic and our pride. Maybe instead of our housing, when you want to rent a house or apartment because of your ethnic group. And aside from that, I mean, you want an online personality. I mean, that was arrested in open about it. I mean, just about a few weeks ago, it claimed that when I mean doing a show, I said like we're not allowed to buy land in eastern states. So those are like biggest like because of his ethnic group or thereabouts. So I'm just like concerned about also there's this group institution social media like at times even in recent time some people have got Lagos smells and because of that some commentator made the remark that you should go back to your state, you know, Lagos smells and you can't live in Lagos. So over time there have been this group about go back to your state. In terms of ethnic discrimination that's emanating from Nigerian, not only from the elders, also from the youth. So this is actually motivated by various recent events in Nigerian politics. So according to the Human Rights Watch, just 2021, they claim that throughout Nigeria, non-indigenous are forced to cope with state and local government policies and practices that exclude them from many of the material benefits of Nigerian citizenship. Such discrimination reflects a widespread belief among many Nigerians that state and local government exist not to serve the interests of all their constituents, but only those of their indigent population. I mean, like most of the policies that made in some states, even like in Lagos states, at times reflects, I mean, the interests of the indigents and not the settlers or like people that are not living in Lagos, probably like they are not born as a Gaussian or so. Even aside, I have this personal belief that it's much easier for an immigrant in some countries to be like in a city of that country than is an Igbo man born in Lagos and has the national claim to Lagos to be a Lagosian at times. So that's like my personal belief that this comes from a place of personal experience because you don't have control over where you are born. You don't have control over like the circumstances surrounding your birth, where you should be born, where and how you should be born. But at times, some of these like factors account for your survival in the state or in the country at times. So there is recurring tensions around indigeneity and belonging. And also go back to your state reflects contestation over subnational citizenship. So this research focused on indigenous and citizenship. I mean, how Nigeria navigates the idea of citizenship and indigeneity within their various cultural environments. So I try to conceptualize the terms, go back to your states. So in Nigerian context, the phrase go back to your state is a politically and socially charged expression that reflects the issue of indigeneity, ethnic identity, and belonging, often used to marginalize or exclude individuals who are seen as non-indigenous or strangers in a particular state, even if they have lived there for decades, at times throughout their lives. At times, they are not like given access to be a citizen or anything of that particular like local government or state where they reside. So what are the implications of this like phrase or this tool of go back to your state? At times it's like shows or like manifest indigenous and central divide. And aside from that, it shows ethnic discrimination among various people that inhabit a certain state. Also, it shows social exclusion and conflict. It shows like we are yet to have national integration and unity, despite having like coexisting among ourselves. It shows that we are not yet living as a single or united people. So the manifestation of this word, go back to your state, manifests in various ways. For instance, in job, at times on social media, some people they claim that because of my ethnic background, because of my ethnicity, I was denied a certain job. So we can't dismiss this fact within the Nigerian context that it doesn't happen, because it doesn't happen to you, doesn't mean it doesn't happen to others. Also, in civil service, at times, this was my own personal experience because I mean, you have served in a particular country or like a particular like place, and because of that, they claim that they reserve this post for like indigenous of that country or of that like particular institutions, because you are not like an indigenous of that state, then you cannot benefit or participate or get job in civil service. And also in outside, I saw a commentator making a claim that I mean, at times if you are filling a form or making a house search in Lagos, if you have one person, the partner extent I interviewed, claim that you have to like not the agent has not to write your ethnic or tribe because the landlord doesn't give a house to Igbos. So I mean, to avoid getting a house on time, so you have to like not write your ethnic or your tribe in that form when you are trying to search for a house. As a Nigerian, what do you have to like? You can't get a house because of the ethnic group, because some landlords think that they don't want an Igbo or a certain ethnic group as their tenants. Also, in terms of education, where of course this cannot be dismissed in education, where some states like give admission, it's like the indigenous force, the constant indigenous force, and they like that with like merits and qualification at the expense of like indigenous and like they try to put merit out of the window. Also, this cannot be the same in politics. And we imagine that where we have like in Lagos State, where we have like a Kano citizen like in Lagos, I say that in the picture, where we have Umar Aliu being a governor of Lagos State, where we have, Balogun being a governor in Kaduna State, and where we have like someone that from Yoruba being a governor in Imo State. Probably Nigeria will get to that place in the near future. So in my research question, so I'm trying to look at how does identity shape Nigerian state formation? So for my research methodology, I try to use qualitative method, and I rely on two methods: content analysis and interpretive method. So my content analysis, I try to get my data from social media, particularly from X, then also from newspaper. And also I try to use interpretive method. I try to interpret some comments and try to like understand the meaning, the experiences, and perspective of people within their social and cultural context. Then I try to make some. So this work is anchored on like various theories, but I try to focus on just one, on citizen and subjects of Mahmoud Mandani in his work, Colonial Legacies in Contemporary Africa. So it has like the thing that is between colonialism, that what we are expressing now, it has colonial influence or undertones. Then the Nigerian like colonialism, we have some people that refer to as citizens, then we have some people that refer to as subjects. The citizens they have access to modern education, they have access to like civil life, while the subjects they don't have they are going by customary law, so they don't have access to like this modern infrastructures. So that shows the divide between the citizen and subject, which we imported to like post-colonial states. So I tried to make some samples, some like comment on social media, particularly on X, given the recent event of how Lagos smells. And so this is one of the comments I got from the Hex. So this is not my word, it's a word from one of the comment I saw online. I'm immigrant to my home country, Nigeria. When anyone speaks constructively, we start discrimination, go back to your state. I'm Nigerian, and all state belongs to me to move freely and live freely. Then another commentator gave the comment that exactly my point. The statement, if you don't like Lagos, go back to your state of origin, is so traditional. To come from the mouth of a Nigerian, it was the fact that there is no Nigeria, and there can never be a Nigeria. Then the last one, like I tried to make, if you look at the comment on this side, this was the recent comment that was made in the light of recent events. So if it's made in Lagos some period, feel free to relocate to your state of origin or any other state that likes the roses. Even out just one state is ridiculous. And once again, it takes the effort of everyone to keep a place clean. So if Lagos is smelling that badly, blame the inhabitants and not just the government. So just to show that Nigeria, we often emphasize our state of origin. So we need an example of our state of origin. I'm very sure everyone in this room, even if you are born in Lagos, you still have a state of origin. When probably want to apply to one thing or the other, just to show that, of course, I have attachment to one place or the other, even if I'm not, like I was born in Lagos, but I don't have access to this. I can't claim to be a Lagosian. So my key findings, I realized that, of course, even like checking like some civil service in some states in Nigeria, I realized that we tend to have like maybe 80% of immigrants in some states, and we have like some settlers in some many other states. So it shows that, of course, the world go back to our states, it reflects our social political like context and our like social habits. So indigeneity shapes access to jobs, education, and politics. And migrants, of course, often politically excluded in various like strata of life within Nigeria. And also the last finding I realized that based on my interpretive method, the state identity exclude non-indigenous. Of course, there are some policies that like put harm or dismiss non-indigenous. So because of my time, I'm going to like, I won't talk about this. So my conclusion, so I calculate, of course, this was state remains ethnically fragmented in Nigeria. In Nigeria, we are not divided. We are ethnically divided along many lines from various aspects of life. And also, I realize that indigeneity undermines citizenship. And also, federalism needs to be reformed. We need to reform the word federalism. Even our Nigerian constitution, we have like, of course, there's no word state of origin in our Nigerian constitution, Nigerian constitution, but there is the word federal character. And this federal character means like, of course, one person must be appointed from every state in Nigeria. Even if the person is not qualified, so far I just have like pick the person at the expense of merits and like people that have these skills. So this really undermines Nigerian development. So by degree of, recommendation and policy suggestion, I try to realize that, of course, maybe the thing that was brought by me that passed thought it should be like, be supported by all Nigerians. Then we have like state of origin should be replaced with state of president as we have in the US. Then we don't lay claim to where like this is where I was born. Should have the state of president rather than having state of origin, which undermines our population, which undermines our development because we have ruled out merits and qualification. And another like recommendation is that we should leave benefit indigenous certificates. At this recent, this modern time, you don't have to like still have to go for a certificate of origin in everything they want to do. You want to apply for schools, you want to get a job, you want to do many other things. You should do that term certificate of origin, asking to provide certificates. And lastly, I recommend that National Orientation Agency should promote inclusive civic education, where at the secondary school and primary school, people should like be taught like should link themselves from having like emphasis on because you are Yoruba, she relates with Yoruba. So the National Orientation Agency should work on this, not for Nigeria to like get greater and to be a beacon of like a great development among the community of nations. So thank you so much. I'm going to stop here.
Thank you for that. You gave us 2 minutes to just so moving on to the next presentation, which will be the last for this panel. We have Oluwabelumi to share our perspective for communication in cultural conflict in Nigeria and analysis of Yoruba and Hausa roots. Do you have?
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Victoria.
Go ahead.
All right. So my what I'm treating on this afternoon is miscommunication and intercultural conflict in Nigeria, and I'm going to focus my research on Yoruba and Hausa crisis in Lagos since 1999 to 2024. Okay, so we all know Nigeria is a multi-ethnic nation with over 250 ethnic groups, and Yoruba and the Hausas, they often coexist in Lagos due to the urban migration and also the commerce in Lagos. So, and Lagos has naturally been the epicenter for businesses and commercial hubs and all. And also it has experienced a lot of multiple ethnic clashes in the densely populated markets, like the Lagos market, Cape to My 12, Shagam, and a lot of markets in populated markets in Lagos. So, and I realized that miscommunication has actually been one of the causes of the breakdown in communication and also intercultural tension in Lagos. So let's look at the research questions. Okay, so how does miscommunication between Yoruba and Hausa communities contribute to the intercultural conflict in Nigeria? What are the dominant media and political narratives shaping mutual perception? So actually the reason what spurred my interest in this research topic is because in 2019 I was a student of Lagos State University, and I was in class that day. That was when all of a sudden we started seeing smoke oozing out outside, gunshot everywhere. Even the lecturer that said teachers, he jumped out of the class. So what's the fate of the students? All of us scattered, and even then I was like, how do I get home? Because we hear rumor in Yanoba, rumor that there's a fight in River Road. There's nowhere to go to. We are just confused in the class. Nowhere, everybody rushing out, even the school, people gunshot and everywhere. So I realized that when we look at the cause of the tension, it was actually the Yoruba and Hausa fighting, because majorly the Hausas are always the Okada riders, suya sellers, car pushers, and realize that Yoruba too, who are the drivers, fighting over ticketing and area boys, because majorly the area boys are the Yorubas are mostly among the area boys, so they clash with the Hausas. That led to the miscommunication, that led to the breakout. I know this morning while we are eating at the cafeteria, as I wanted to drop my food, the woman came to me that, okay, my food. I was like, no, it's mine. She was like, no, you're not trying. They believe that when you just put the food in their front, that means you are telling them to eat out of the So I was actually confused this morning. If it's that, I would have been on my food. So, like this one, miscommunication has actually been one of the breakdown. And I realized that it's out of cultural values and different. So let's move into the objective. Okay, because of my time, I go. All right. So the objective is to analyze the nature and sources of miscommunication among the Yoruba and Hausas, to examine the role of media language in shaping perceptions and conflict, to identify pathways for improving intercultural communication in Nigeria. So, and I'm going to major the research on Yoruba and Hausa relations from 1999 to 2024. So the theory I'm going to use for this, I'm using for this research is we are using the intercultural communication theory by Goodins and Kim 2003. The theory speaks on the individuals from different culture coming together to communicate, and also the challenge that arise from cultural differences. I realized that he stated most of what constitutes misunderstanding, anxiety, ethnocentricism, stereotyping, which often have like what just today, like I just brought my food to your front and you're telling me that it's our food because in your tribe it means that we are eating it together. And okay, and also we are looking at for the stereotyping, we are looking because part of the research I made, which I'm going to look into, I realized that most of the Yoruba and the outsiders in the market, they believe that Yorubas are domineering. Yoruba wants to take over the market. Yoruba are always they are domineering. Igbos They're always after money. They can do anything and undo. Why? And with the okay, I don't want to say with the. So Yorubas believe that Hausas, they're actually violent. They can do anything. They're always with their knife everywhere. So that's the stereotype everybody have. So and you can see, I made an example that in Yoruba are considered being assertive. So Yoruba what we consider assertiveness in Yoruba, Hausa see that people shout and can be violent at any time. And even consider even in the class when rumors break out, the Hausas will always believe you can't kill my brother and I'll look at you and they will actually spread the violence. And also I don't want to move further in that. Let's go. So that so we are looking the second one I'm using is the Tajbel and Turner 1979, which is social identity, which believe that individuals they derive their identity from the groups they belong to. In as much as in the market, if you are my brother, I consider you as my person. And if you are Yoruba, I consider you as my person as a fellow Yoruba man, which brings about favoritism and whenever crisis minor clash should break out, they turn it to be violence. So we're also looking at those frustration and aggression, where people are being frustrated by their unmet needs. And we can see that in Lagos, in market like Maitu, Shagam, you can see that when most of the clashes they had was competition over their space. How do you want to intrude into my space and all? With little agreement. Okay, Shasha Market. In Shasha Market, I think 2021. That was in Ibadan. You can see that just banana seller. I think the Hausa man just wants to just take part of her space, and she flared up, and from that little clash it became a bloody crisis. So let's look into the literature review. Okay, scholars like I don't want to. That is a very long story, and it's going to take part of our time. Okay, but I just want to take it from this Uzoigwe in 2013. It was able to look into that ethnic conflict arise from small interpersonal disputes. Like I said, it just need to dispute and just come to a bloody violence, and that's because of the lack of inter-ethnic communications, lack of effective inter-ethnic communication structure. From all the reviews I made from all those clashes, we can see that there's no effective dispute resolution measures put in place before the government should intervene. That become a bloody thing, and even the OPCs were part of the major structures that escalated those conflicts, because the OPCs they are always against the outsiders, and they are the one that escalates the conflict. Okay, and I also say that the framing and media representation, the framing theory, like Goffman, he stated it that like the media, like if the media they want the media picture it. Okay, like let me say how it is. Like the media also they're also part of those people that aggravate all this conflict, because the way the media present it to the people, it will incite violence. Just like this EdSARS issues, I actually support what the NBC did for most of all those media outlets, that they ban a lot, they find a lot of them that were trying to incite violence. Because when people, even online social media, when it's that, oh, Hausas are fighting, Hausa brothers will say, hey, no, say no to Yoruba, say no to Yoruba. From there, Yoruba to say no to Hausas, spiking conflict and and that's how violence break out. So the media, they need to come together and ensure that it's not all content, it's not all news source, it's not all content that needs to be teach, that there should be a little bit of gatekeeping and ensuring that there's some things that need to be kicked away. So let's, because of time, I don't have to go into this. Okay, my research design is qualitative, and I'm also going to take I took analysis from Human Rights Watch reports, newspaper articles, academic journals, NGO reports, and also part of my personal stories, and also for eyewitness account also. So let's look into the findings. Okay, please can you go down to all those crises? Yes, so this is the Shagam crisis in 2004. It was actually, there's a recurring clash, because one breakdown in 1999, another breakdown in 2000, and part of what happened in the 1999 was Oru. There was I don't know if you're not Yoruba, like Oru means the curfew, traditional curfew and women are not supposed to be out in the night, and also strangers. So like the Hausa woman, she just went out in the night and she violated the curfew. So that's how the Yoruba traditionalists had to hold that, and that led to the fight and the class, the conflict broke out. 30 to 50 deaths occurred, mostly among the Hausa, because the Hausa were like, no, you can't keep my sister. And that was what broke out. And we realized that even before the government would intervene, a lot of violence has taken place. And even traditionally, that there was no, like, even traditional leaders were, they didn't intervene. So, and also rumors and misinformation also spiked it, because a lot of people like, they killed like 10 people. Hausas too were like, no, can't kill 10 people. And rumors and misinformation led to the incitement in violence. And also look at, can you go to the second one? K2 my 12 in that one happened in current from 1999 to 2024. We can see that violence clashes the OPC and the outside traders. So we realized that okay, there was actually the outside, okay, the OPC, they believe that the outsiders are criminals. They're like criminals, you need to get out from the market. Outsiders are criminals. And we can see that the OPC were people that spearheaded those OPCs. For those that don't know, OPCs are Odua People's Congress. That's the Yoruba group, the cultural group, and like they are nationalists for Yoruba nation. So and okay, yeah, so like that's how they're like, no, you can't kill like they were like Yoruba, the outsiders are criminals, they are dominating the market, please get out, and that was what spiked. Over 100 people were killed in that conflict. And also in 2002, there were like maybe like over control of market spaces. They believe that outsiders are taking over the market spaces. They need to get out of it. Please. And 2016, 2016 too, another conflict broke out. That was a motorcycle accident between a Yoruba rider and Hausa trader. Like those market pushers, the Hausa cart pusher, like 10 people, just little the accident that just happened. 10 people died because of that. Why? Because of rumors and misinformation. And there was mistrust. Because little by little, you can't be out. They believe that, the stereotypes that outsiders are criminals. So they started like mistrust, and that was what spiked it. Ajegunle violence is okay, yeah, Ajegunle violence. That one too is OPC too, that caused that in from 2000 to 2001. It was steered by the OPC. So the OPC want to like, okay, let's cause ethnic cleansing. Let the Yoruba leave and let the Hausa stay. So that one is even bloody because they stop every commercial vehicles. If you cannot speak Yoruba or Igbo, they will gun you down. So like they have to ensure that even if like Yoruba, they have to speak Yoruba or Igbo, and if you can't speak it, then they gun them down. So that was the OPC that caused that, because there was no platform. And there was no platform for like mediation for that. And also fear and misinformation, because people were leaving their shops, people were leaving, the OPC are here, OPC are there, people leave the shop being looted and all of that. So we are looking at Motion Araba, Idi Araba 2002. Okay, please, I need to write the for Motion and Idi Araba. That one, it was also there was clash between the area boys and the outside traders. So the Yano Bahon, which I was also one of the eyewitness for that. That one, that place is 2014 to 2020. And that one, it has actually, because area boys and also the ticketing and all Yoruba drivers too. So I believe that all of this has been happening because number one, there's no intergroup, there's no communication dialogue, like there's rumors also has also been there, misinformation, and part of the recommendations I made, I think include I slide. I believe that there should be community-based and inter-ethnic mediation. Like they should ensure that okay, there's committees for peace building, like have a Yoruba, because I believe all of this thing were happening because everybody were just fighting on their own. There's no dialogue. And before the government will intervene, almost like over 100 people have been killed and all. So there's no mediation. Like if all of this stuff could have mediation for it. And also schools should be incorporated part of the syllabus, that there should be intercultural communication part of the syllabus for people to learn. And also I believe that there should be multilingual public announcements. Like the woman that was killed, the outside woman that was killed when the Oro was declared, she didn't know. She was just going out in the night. So like there should be like whenever an announcement is made, even in markets, everywhere, it should be communicated according to their languages. That people can come together and understand tribes. Like this afternoon, like this morning I said now, that the woman, I placed my food in your front, and the woman said, okay, I should eat because in my tribe, they said if you place it in my front, that means we are going to eat together. I don't know about your tribe, I don't know about your culture. So we need to understand, like, let it be related according to culture. Like, especially in these densely populated markets, every tribe, they should understand each other culture and languages.
And also there should be intercultural, interethnic cultural exchange programs. Like we should have festivals and all of that together. Everybody should come together. And it should not be like, okay, in Igbo tribe having their let everybody come together. We are all one. It's just the tribes that differs. So also we should have equal economic opportunities. Like the my 12, the K to my 12. One of the things that caused the K to my 12 people is that, oh, Hausas are taking over my land. How will Hausa take over my land? And even part of what they were clamoring for was that among the expos is filled with Yorubas. There's no Hausas among the expos in K to my 12 market. So let there be equal representation in the expos. That, and also media monitoring, like I said earlier, like that media framing theory that the way the media should not incite hatred. When there's a sensitive issue, the media should sift every information that comes around. And when it's even a sensitive issue, it should not also be part of, oh, Yorubas are killing the outside because they kill. No, there should be some of gatekeeping on it, and because the way you picture the word to me is the way to have influenced my perceptions. So the media, which are the voice of the masses, they need to communicate strategically, not just being objective in it. So, and also police neutrality, because one of the triggers of the conflict was that the police have been biased. Maybe Yoruba police know to kill out, Yoruba police would know to handle it and all of that. So also national framework, we should also have town hall meetings and all of that to resolve conflict. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. I took your skills when we were through issues, but our underlying communication is representation of the media agenda in terms of giving out the perceptions and shaping people's understanding about this situation. Thank you very much for that, Madam. So we have roughly 2 minutes left and space for the question and answer segment. So this is how we'll pick number. The number 1, number 2. Know your number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I'm so sorry. There's 7. So we can't
waste the time. So we have to make it short. So that
very
my ears are itching. I want to go downstairs now.
Sorry, everyone. Just one question. Sorry, I should go around. Go ahead.
So one question.
How can you to be divided among the presenters?
No, we are permitted to give one question. That's
No.
okay.
Sure.
Short and brief. That'll be okay.
Presenter, would you please give us a reason why the project maybe you have the reason. In the title. In the title you said no. I mean in the title of your text.
Exploring conflict triggers in
community development.
I already said this in my slide.
Okay, that's project okay. Oh, and Sunday Ezekiel and Princess Muslim, right? Yes, point was actually bound this subsequent presentation basically more congested and less volume. You flow and not the papers, but the way it was presented, both oral and meeting involved was not really. But then the objective of your work, I don't know how you can or you will be able to, since you said that you work in program, then I think you have to change like if the paper, they're not objective and just to invite over the school bus years. The time between when they presented and when we are contributing is far too wide, so we have lost track. So because I think I'm listening.
Thank you. How about you?
Thank you very much. For the first presenter, very brief. My question is, what role in particular are the identity politics play on democracy in Africa? Yes. No, actually, the first presenter. Okay, presenter. Yeah, what role in particular identity politics play on democracy in Africa? and what brought about identity politics in Africa as a whole. And the second question is, has the international election observers really contributed to electoral reform? The second speaker there. Actually, as I said, your number two objective is very unclear. Number two question is quite unclear. And you said online survey, and you stated categorically that it is not actually reliable. Why did you proceed with the online survey? Secondly, you said you were to give 300 respondents, only 30 replied, and you are already banking on results. Why? And Mr. David, my question is, Dr. David, that's for me. That's for me. And don't you think you are trying to try to conflict cultural identity with citizenship? Consider the fact that culture has to be placed, has to do with language. Now in the UK, for example, though they do not have divided culture like we have, I would say as in many multiculturalism has happened, but they are now conservative in some aspects. So don't you think trying to deprive the people of their cultural people because of people coming in, don't you think it will be unfair? Secondly, on the aspect of house issue, don't you think people can actually want to withheld? I want to take only Yoruba due to experience and not due to hatred to one particular ethnic tribe. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. That's all.
About yeah, because of our time, most of the questions I wish to ask are right. You first and second there is our first speaker. That's Mr. German. I was I'm very sorry. Yeah. I was hoping to see non-verification on things trigger itself. So that is one of the value of your work, not conflict itself. Conflict is a phenomenon that already happened. I was hoping that we give more clarification on conflict triggers. What are those things that trigger those self? We mentioned some of the interaction between the project implementation and the gaming community. And what now they have had projects that have been but you didn't touch on triggers, which is behavioral. Then to the second to the Mr. David, yeah, we go back to your state. Like my brother also said, and I think there is a conflict, a dilemma about origin itself, which is peculiar to Africans. And I would love that you consider looking at give theory of nationalism and that theory, because that will enable us to understand why Africans will continue to have that familiar statement in their own, their century to use the language, and how it will not deny, especially minority groups, who are able to thrive now because of their state authority. We have the Jukuns, we have the Jews, we have I've been in Niger Delta, I've worked at Niger Delta. The reason we have some of these colonial times is because some of these things have been subsumed by the big Yoruba, Igbos, and the Hausas that seeing those are the three ethnic groups in Nigeria until we now have to come to the commission that we have in 1959. What happens to the minority? And that is why we have states. Creation of commission because of this culture. It's the global sentiment, the language, the culture, the ancestry. Where I buried my grandfather, I still go there. When I go to Nigeria, I go to bow my head. There, where I buried my father, I still go there. And you're not going to deny me those things. So I wish you look at the global theory. And that will be the next. Thank you so much.
Thanks, students. Number 4.
Yeah, I just put this on comments for the first and the last session. Then the first one said that most Nigerians are put to abuse politicians. Yet, a small public integrated project funded by the World Bank could not be functional. That means self-governance is gained by selfishness rather than common good. This is where politicians are to divide and rule us. And therefore, where do we go from here? Then for the last presenter, the if it takes resentment among the great peoples at once, when what's happening, so it's a confident tension. There are rules for the tension as well in the regional government. So we have not seen civil war as contributed and have seen even state of the concept, but NYC has not solved it. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Number 5.
I like this number 5.
Number 5.
Sorry, I think I don't know if I call the question or comment. Sorry, confusion. Sorry, I don't know. Your set. I personally think those the main causes of electoral or election violence is mechanism. Then the second one is that I couldn't find the federal framework on which law well sound culture. I think that the rest of important. So Mr. or Dr. Davis, yeah, like I said, I want to further the point that there are reasons for what we have or what we can in the judge. On next, I told X very well. This particular topic, that's one of the reasons I gave it. Then I think. Now, I could decipher that the trend, if you check the trend very well, the same the particular ethnic group that has another ethnic group go back to their state. Actually mention something which is very, very critical very, very critical in solely war. Space. Dogs. If you check very well, that is what triggered, that was what triggered that lady to say, oh, when she said, because males, post felt offended. That's okay, fine. If Lagos smell, why don't you go back to state? But when she was found out, it was found out that she was posted to one of the states in the east, and she had to work her way to Lagos. Then that means you have something, you have an end in mind. So then what would now?
You don't need to be emotional. Let's just have something that you think you should do, or you need, let it be academic. Let's not try to show this is right, this is wrong. Because the way you are coming, somebody else from the other side might decide to also bring some, first. So please let
No, like, don't get my point. I'm not being emotional about it. I'm saying respect.
The points of respect.
Yeah, take that. That's what I'm speaking to.
Your points of respect the host have been clearly stated. The presenter have posted that. Okay, so number 6.
thank you very much.
Number 6, sorry.
Yeah, okay, that's good. So I have some questions and comments, but I was not going to push on. But I would like to address this one now. And I think that this is an academic development. We should respect ourselves. And the point was trying to make the whole point, according to what the said. I have the contrary to one point, but that does not mean that it should be short of. An academic section. That's your own right now. Okay, so I would like that from you. Okay, so you gave some points about go back to the faith. Yeah, but I think that there are something that you can still do better. For example, you mentioned the Federal Character Commission. There is a reason why the Federal Character Commission was not so. It is to address the issue of discrimination and third marriage commission. For example, this is the University of Lagos. This is the University of Lagos, domiciled in Lagos. If they give the university chance to do the cook everybody, I'm just saying, the university might just decide to be discriminated and employ all Yorubas.
maybe from the influence of others, every chairman and right. And this is what Intercanada Commission is trying to address. Maybe they are doing it right, or maybe they are not doing it right with a different problem entirely. Again, we talk about issue of non-indigenous, I also want to say this, even though it's not my own position, that, for example, we talk about those very well. There are many countries whereby non-indigenous nations have contested the election and they won in Lagos State. There are instances where non-Yorubas have contested and they won. In fact, in Lagos State, since 2007, there has always been someone that is not Yoruba that contests and win the election in Lagos State. That does not mean that go back to your state is not happening. You understand? It means that we need to do better. I will stop there because of our time. And for the last presenter, okay. For the last presenter, I like your question too. I don't want to add. There are deeper issues beyond miscommunication. They are fueling the crisis between outside and youth. And one thing that I have seen from my own theory is value system. The values of the outsiders and the values of the Yorubas are different. And this is in context of how we have been brought up. So, for instance, the issue in Ubialaba, the issue to the Yaloba, might not be just because of this communication. And you mentor results. They don't trust themselves. So for countries, results might even be more pronounced than miscommunication in the course of the crisis. For users, I noticed that in the presentation, maybe it's on the first side, you gave us some list of deaths. For example, you mentioned that in Nigeria in 2011, 800 people died. You did get the data offhand, so I think it should not be cited. Then I think it's also important to cite some examples of electoral violence after after and the role of the peacekeepers and electoral observers. For example, in Togo in 2020, there was an election, and the election was adjudged to be one of the worst elections that have been conducted in Togo. But international election observers gave a stamp to it. So I think such situations we cited to make the paper more visible. I will not direct from them because of our time.
Okay, thank you so much. The last, what please?
She has already talked about the instead of sorry, I don't know how to. I need to know what happens because first of all, there was one far almost at this next talking about entities. So we should have known that. This we need to know. I don't know. I might be wrong. This is a learning process. I think the literature is not well fit. Because if they try to look at different literature review and statements of the research program.
For which particular presentations now?
I two of them, I saw that in two people, so I can't remember. In the literature review, they cited two people. And they told us the findings of those two people. That is supposed to be the statement of the circular, because the statement of the circular, you cite two or more people. It is from what they have done, from the findings of their work, that is where you see the loophole. That is where you see the gap. That you yourself, your own work will now fit in. But in literature review, you talk about conceptualizations on things, and at the end of the day, you now say, you now put, they want to hear your own voice. If you agree on what those people have said, or if you are not agreeing, if you are not in tandem with what they have said, then you say you think that it is this way, this way, this way. So I think you got that enough finished.
Okay, so thank you. So Dave, I'll allow you to react to some of, then I'll react to the bottom.
Sorry. The woman for the violence. The one at Ajegule, I was born and bred in Ajegule. And you need to make more research. The last tribal clash that happened in Nigeria, though I cannot say yet, it wasn't Yoruba Hausa, it was Yoruba and Job. In fact, I nearly lost my whole life. I had to tell them my name, people. I was coming from this one. The moment I highlighted at the country, they yes, and Yoruba, they have discussed. I was in their middle with some contrasting behind me. I had to say my name, my surname, and speak my language. Before when I was going, I was saying dead, but so it was Yorubas and the jobs. So it's not only about Yorubas and yes.
Okay, thank you so much. We can end the live session now, and the conversation definitely will have